Dear viewers, it is our pleasure, our honor to talk today to Mr. Larry Johnson. Mr. Johnson has worked with the CIA as an analyst for many years, and he's currently a political commentator. Larry, welcome. Welcome
Thanks so
to
much, Arthur.
our program. Thanks for agreeing to give us your time. So all eyes are on Washington. In a few days, we'll have the inauguration of the president-elect, and everyone is taking bets as to what the new administration's foreign policy will be like. President Trump said that he wants to be the president of peace. He said that he was going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. So I'm not sure how he's going to do that. But at the same time, there were certain choices made. Certain people were nominated to his administration that, it's difficult to think of them as doves. So
Right.
there's this tension between what was promised during the campaign and what may unfold when President Trump comes to power. He has a lot on his hands. He'll have the war in Ukraine. He has the slaughter that's happening today in Palestine. There are some other words used by the United Nations with regard to
Right,
that.
right.
Yes, and there's a talk of possible attack against Iran. So it's very, very messy. What do you think this new administration's foreign policy will be like?
Well, one, they're going to be like the guy that follows the end of the parade behind the elephants. He's got the big broom and the dustpan. He's having to sweep up everything that was left over. The Biden administration really has, I think the words of J.D. Vance the other day were created a dumpster fire on the
Yeah,
international front. And I think that's exactly right. It's almost they're trying to sabotage everything. They're pouring lighter fluid on it. Uh, they're like some of the arsonists who apparently started the fires out in Los Angeles.
I heard of that. Yeah.
You know, and so it's coming into a very messy situation. On the other hand, yeah, Trump. I'm not thrilled with a lot of the appointments of Trump. Um, just from that they are more ideologically driven as opposed to really having a clear uh, interest of the United States at heart. But Trump, he's the leader of the band. He's the one calling the shots. So, example, he appointed Steve Witkoff as the special envoy for the Middle East, and Witkoff is known as an Orthodox Jew. So you're thinking, oh boy, here we go. He's gonna be showing up with tubs of cocoa butter to rub on Bibi Netanyahu's back.
Mhm.
Well, apparently last week, Witkoff called up and said, "Okay, I need to see Bibi Friday night." And the people, oh no, Bibi, it's Shabbat, and we can sundown. We can't be violating a religious observance. Witkoff basically said, "Hey, go F your mother. You know, he's going to meet with me or else."
Hmm.
So they had a meeting. And apparently at that meeting, Witkoff said, "This is the deal. You're going to cut this deal with Hamas. You're going to agree to a ceasefire. And no, and if you don't, we're going to cut off aid to you. It's real simple." You know, Nobody in the Biden administration had talked to Bibi and the Zionists that way in the last 3 years. So what's to be made of that? Because on the one hand, the assumption was that because uh, Trump had appointed someone like Witkoff, that Witkoff again would be doing the bidding of the Zionists. Nope, because Trump had taken money from Miriam Adelson, the widow of Sheldon Adelson, billionaire, very wealthy uh, Jewish entrepreneur. That again, Trump would be like the monkey attached to the organ grinder. You know, the the Jews are cranking the organ, and Trump's dancing around. No, Trump's got his own vision and his own thoughts. So we got to try to adjust to. On the one hand, yes, he's very pro-Israeli. He's going to do things for Israel that a lot of presidents wouldn't do. On the other hand, he's also very pragmatic and I don't think he's emotionally engaged to it. So he will. I think he sees now the danger that Israel has presented to itself by following the Zionist crazies on the path to war. And sort of the other uh, thing that was indicative of Trump's unpredictability was when he posted up on Truth Social that video clip of Jeff Sachs at the Cambridge Union,
Yeah.
and uh, Sachs referred to Netanyahu as a deep, dark, and then questioned the origin of his parentage.
Yeah.
Suggesting that may not have been born in wedlock. It is a much cruder term. So Trump is clearly sending a message with that this was you would not have if you would have gone back 3 months ago and said, "Hey, I want you to make a bet that Trump's going to do X, Y, and Z," you probably wouldn't have taken the bet, and wisely so. But so I don't know if that makes it clear, but Trump on the foreign policy front he's going to do first and foremost Donald Trump, and these people, regardless of their ideological predispositions, whether it's Marco Rubio or Michael Waltz, um, or John Radcliffe at the CIA, Pete Hegseth at the Department of Defense, you're going to do what Trump wants. Trump's calling the shots. And, given what he's gone through and prevailing as he had, maybe, I think he's earned the right.
So he will be able to counteract the deep state, quote unquote.
He'll make some inroads against it at least. Uh, Now, to highlight the depths of this, um, James O'Keefe came out yesterday with a video, undercover video of this guy who's a former FBI agent. He went to school and became acquainted with Hillary, but when he was at George Washington University, he's now working for Booz Allen Hamilton. And I wrote about this as part of helping people understand the deep state, because really starting under Bill Clinton, we saw a shift where people, I'd be like the Honduran analyst, and I was a civil servant, and I was a GS 11 or 12, and I was being paid by the U.S. government. Well, what happened in the 1990s is a lot of the jobs were shifted to contractors, so they weren't really civil servants. You didn't get the civil service retirement package, but the money was going to Booz Allen. So let's say, that I made $100,000 a year as a CIA analyst. Well, all of a sudden, the CIA is paying Booz Allen $200,000
Hmm.
for an analyst that does the same thing. This is across the board. And so here was this guy talking to James, actually, O'Keefe uses a lot of honeypots, honey traps. Uh, Had some good looking girl. She connected with this guy on Tinder or one of the dating apps. And man, he's just spelling his guts to her. Hey, baby, Al, anything I get to do to sleep with you? And in the course of that, he starts telling about how he's working with current generals in the military to sabotage Donald Trump. So Trump's aware that that's out there. And so that's why he's appointed people like Bondi. I think even, Hegseth is just going to is there to be a hitman to take some of these people out. It is the FBI is corrupt. CIA is corrupt. They really need to be dismantled, but I don't know if that's plausible.
With regard to that, Armenians are being told in our little republic that there are some people who have been appointed by President Trump who have pro-Armenian sympathies or pro-Armenian views. I mean, have you heard of anything like that? And you're following this discourse pretty closely. Have you heard of anyone in this administration or the previous administration say that there are vital national interests in
Let,
Armenia? Vital.
let me guess. Those Armenian Americans being told this are fairly wealthy people
Yeah.
who are making donations. All right.
Or getting a lot of money from donors. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So they're going to tell them anything.
Yep.
Newsflash.
Yep.
They can't find Armenia on the map, all right? They
Yep.
can barely, the good news is they can spell it. It's simpler to spell than say Azerbaijan, okay? But they couldn't find it on a map. They don't care about Armenia. They couldn't they couldn't list a single they couldn't name the capital of Armenia. So all of Armenia is these people are, gosh, willing, uh, the, I don't want to call them idiots, but they're willing idiots. They're being played. They're being gamed.
Money talks, right?
Oh
There's
yeah.
this American expression, money does talk. They receive a lot of money from abroad, hundreds of millions of
Hmm.
dollars. For Armenia, that's a lot. And they're convincing our public that US has vital interest in Armenia, that Trump's love Armenians, that he's going to defend us against Turkey, which is for me, it's just lunacy. But sadly, and right now there's this jubilation, by the way, in Armenia because there was a document signed, I believe, yesterday or the day before on strategic partnership. I mean, these are
Right.
beautiful words. It's very nice to call something a strategic partnership. But in the past, we had documents like this signed between the US and Georgia, if I remember correctly, Afghanistan, a few other countries.
Yeah.
So what does that really mean? I'm trying to get some details about this document. Is there going to be a military base in Armenia? Is there going to be any sizable military assistance to Armenia? And I'm just trying to find out because I haven't seen the text yet. But what do you think this means, this document that was signed between the US and Armenia?
Uh, it means that Armenia is just being used as a tool, as part of a broader plan to attack Russia. And in the end, Armenia will go the way that other countries that were being used as tools or pawns by the United States have. Let's hope it turns out as well for Armenia as Vietnam did, and not Vietnam during the period when the United States was, killing Vietnamese, but in the aftermath when Vietnam separated itself and then became its own, developed a robust economy.
Yeah.
Armenia's major play, as it has been since World War II, is oil. That's the oil fields are what Hitler lusted after. Armenia is playing a critical role right now in keeping Israel afloat with oil.
Mm.
Uh, and sort of the irony of that is that oil flows through Turkey,
Yes.
and so despite the animus that exists between Armenia and Turkey, uh, the oil sort of becomes a bridge because the money, the folks making money off of that on both sides of the border have, zero interest in disrupting that flow. I've maintained all along that one of the keys to halting Israel's actions in Gaza would be cutting off the flow of oil.
Right. I've
Turkey,
heard you say that. I've heard you
Tur
say that.
Turkey could easily do that. Armenia's, continuing to provide the oil.
You mean Azerbaijan, the
I,
country next door? Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
but but uh, um, it is the move by the United States to persuade Armenia to pursue a role independent of Russia, even though Russia is like the largest trading partner, if not, you know,
Yes, it is.
top five trading partners of Armenia. So why have you commit economic suicide? That,
That's about to happen. That's about to
yeah.
happen.
And this, but this notion of a strategic agreement with the United States, Armenia is too far. The United States can't come to your rescue. I mean, if the odds are increasing, I think, in the next 6 months of Azerbaijan carrying out an attack on Armenia, and sort of, if you will, continuing the war that had started with Nagorno-Karabakh. And if Armenia is foolish enough to believe that the United States would come to its rescue militarily, forget about it. The United States cannot even sustain a fight for Ukraine, and Azerbaijan is farther away. more difficult to get to. It's, there's the flight routes in and out are not easy. So this, um, the Senate, the United States has been very, very cynical in its use of foreign countries for its own gratification. And we'll tell you, you're our best friend, you're a buddy, and I understand how with the Armenian community here in the United States, Armenia itself is a victim of genocide and experienced what it was that to try to be destroyed, not because of things that you did, but because of who you were, who you are. Uh, I can see that that does form a bond among the people that survive, and looking for justice. But I just say it, they're looking for justice from whether it's Donald Trump or if it was Joe Biden, they're looking in the wrong place.
Right, right. And you did mention the possibility of an Azeri attack. Are you picking up any information indicating that? I mean, we are. We can see that they're
Yeah.
arming themselves. And by the way, Israel is providing the lion's share of Azerbaijan's weapons. They are quickly rearming themselves. Their military budget is 3 or 4 times the size of Armenia's. And there's all reason to think that Azerbaijan may attempt some kind of a military action. They just called Armenia a fascist state. He makes no secret of his intentions. Our neighbor.
Yeah, Aliyev.
Yeah,
Aliyev
yeah,
was
yeah.
just the other day. I mean, that's part of what I'm basing this on, that, his just out of the blue, his very aggressive language. And, you know, uh, but again, Armenia is doing it to itself.
That's true.
Pashinyan is, going out of his way to suck up to the West
That's right.
and dissing Vladimir Putin. Like, yeah, I don't need you. Yeah, boy, it's not very smart. And I guarantee you that the non-governmental organizations that are working in Armenia are, they're maybe not directly controlled by the CIA, but the CIA is certainly
Yep,
using them,
yep,
manipulating them
yep.
to create public opinion, public support. Uh, it's a color revolution without it being a color revolution.
Well, it was a revolution, a velvet revolution, and a lot of promises were made back in 2018, and then it went the same way that the events in Georgia and Ukraine went, except we're not Ukraine or Georgia, very
Right.
small, and we're not really that significant. There's one of the messages sent to the Armenian public is that the US has deterred and will deter Aliyev from attacking. Bless you. That the
Same.
US will deter Azerbaijan from attacking. And I'm trying to understand how exactly will the US do that, provided that its closest ally in the region is Israel, and Azerbaijan is Israel's ally. And Turkey is the second, or maybe even the first most important US ally in the region. And again, Azerbaijan is the closest ally of Turkey. So how can the United States deter Aliyev by doing what exactly? By placing a phone call? Because that's what we're told. If you can imagine, we're told that Blinken just made a call, and that's why Aliyev stopped.
Well, no, actually, what we're seeing is the loss of U.S. control in the region, I think,
Yeah,
because with Turkey's invasion of Syria
right,
and its
right.
subversion of Syria, well, it's now faced with trying to exert control over Syria, and it doesn't have control,
No.
and it's particularly going after the Kurds. You
Well, yeah,
know,
that's going to be interesting, right?
if you will, the sort of the Kurds and the Armenians share that in common, being targets of the Turks. And problem is the Kurds are backed by the United States. Now, what's the U.S. going to do?
That's the question.
Yeah, are we gonna abandon the Kurds? And in fact, when we conclude this interview, I'm going to be talking later today with Sherry Lazari, who's she writes about the Kurds. She's a sort of a scholar, and I'm going to try to drill down to find out. But the prospect for a confrontation between Turkey and the United States is increased, not diminished. Similarly, confrontation between Turkey and Israel has increased, not diminished. That may be the thing that saves Armenia. Turkey will be so busy fighting the United States and the Israelis, they won't have time to worry about you.
Hmm. Do you think that the US will try to stand by the Kurds, or will Trump kind of cede them to Turkey like he did during his first administration?
It depends on the deal.
Hmm.
The Trump is so transactional in this. He is not ideologically disposed to say, yeah, the Kurdish people must be defended at all costs. They're expendable. If if the deal is such that he can secure, let's say, a Middle East peace that is going to make him the peacemaker, the Kurds will be, he'd get rid of them in a heartbeat. If the path to peace hinges upon protecting the Kurds, then yeah, he'll protect them. That's the thing. It's very transactional. That is the one thing about I think people should have learned about Donald Trump after his first term.
Speaking of Syria, we've seen some pretty unprecedented developments there. A guy who was leader of Al-Nusra, I believe, former associate of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, an organization that was linked to the killing of Americans several days ago in New Orleans, and an organization that killed 3,000 Americans on September 11, now is an ally of the West. He's called
Yeah,
a
yeah,
reformed terrorist. I loved your reference to Queer Eye for the Straight Guy show, because
yeah,
they basically gave him a haircut, trimmed his beard, gave him a facial, a nice suit, and he became a Democrat. I mean, this is pretty unbelievable.
yeah.
So, where is Syria going? Do you think Syria will be partitioned? Are we talking about a partition? I mean, Israel seems to know exactly what parts of Syria it wants. Turkey seems to talk about some historically Turkish or Ottoman territory. So, is this going to be a partition?
Well, let's recognize that first and foremost, Syria was an artificial creation in the aftermath of World War One.
Right.
So within, this Syria, you've got 70%, 75% Sunni, but those are, families, tribes, and they have their own interests. The Alawites, similarly, smaller group, but again,
Right.
confined, and then the Christians that are there, a much smaller minority, and then as well as the Kurds. What's happening is nobody's in control, and Jelani and HTS, as his current incarnation, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. But as you correctly noted, he was a protege of al-Baghdadi of ISIS fame, and they were cutting heads off. He's been involved with murdering people, and,
Unbelievable.
and then he transferred did sort of they had a bit of a falling out with al-Baghdadi for creates al-Nusra, but yeah, again it was like we're more Muslim than you are. It was sort of the argument, and then the evolution to HTS. And having HTS as one of the top 10 terrorist groups in terms of activity attacks over the last 7 years is a fact. It's not made up. So it just, again, it shows what I call the moral flexibility of the United States. We like to talk about we're tough on terrorism and a global war on terrorism. We're not serious about that at all. Again, if it suits our short-term interests, we don't care what it means long-term. We don't care what it means for the people of Syria. Now, Syria is not, Turkey can't control Syria, and Jelani, can't either. His HTS is basically comprised of a lot of foreign fighters. They're not comprised of Syrians. So if HTS was a movement of Syrian radicals or Syrian Sunnis that had risen up and said, "We can't take this anymore," yeah, then I'd say it'd be a much more have a chance to be effective. But instead, you got these people, these outsiders, and all they're going to do is stir up further resentment. The civil war, there will be attacks upon attacks. So it's going to be chaos, and And in that regard, neither it's going to end up being a bit of a military drain on Turkey. Again, this is, from Armenia's standpoint, if Turkey was not preoccupied with Syria, then yeah, I could see Armenia would be sweating bullets big time because nothing to distract Turkey. But they're distracted right now, and actually with each passing day it gets worse, not better.
So
So that
ironically, it could be good news for us.
yeah, so I mean that's the sort of a twisted way of looking at it, but
It is.
it could help Armenia buy some time right now.
Speaking of buying time, there's a lot of talk of the possible attack against Iran. Some people are even saying it's going to be within months.
Yeah.
Uh, are you picking up any messages regarding signals about an upcoming kind of military action against Iran? Probably just air strikes, or God forbid, boots on the ground. I mean, what is that going to look like?
But there's no way the United States could put boots on the ground in Iran. Absolutely no way.
Yeah,
Hell, we couldn't even conduct a hostage rescue attempt back in 1980.
yeah, I remember.
And one of my, I've got a good friend. He was one of the young Army Rangers on that mission on the ground. Um, the I think there's less prospect of a Western attack, an Israeli attack. Israel's distracted right now. They're overstretched. Look at what happened in Gaza. It's a confined, what is 25 miles by 5 miles wide, maybe 10 miles wide at certain points. It's a relatively small area. Let's call it 250 square miles. And yet here we are 15 months since October 7th. And they don't have full control of it at all. They've not been able to crush Hamas. They've killed a god awful number of Palestinian men, women, and children, and I'm sure they've killed some Hamas fighters. But Israel's certainly not in control of the territory. In the last between Monday, was it Sunday, and Tuesday, uh, Israel lost like 9 soldiers killed and over 20 wounded in separate attacks in Gaza.
Hmm.
Israel can't afford to have losses like that. It's just, you think about it in terms of Armenia, you said like 3 million people.
Yeah.
Well, that's a third of the size of New York City.
Yep.
Uh, could you imagine what the reaction would be, say, in New York City or Los Angeles, if in 1 year 500 police had been killed in action? Oh my
No,
God.
it's pretty
Uh,
grave.
Yeah, this is because of the size, it's too small. Well, that's what's going on with Israel. They can't sustain those losses for the reserves. So their only hope would be to launch some sort of, missile an airstrike against Iran. But any intelligence chief worth their salt is going to say that's going to be suicidal. It can't be effective. Similarly for the United States, I don't think they've talked about it, but the actual logistics of doing it, very, very difficult. Uh, you know, we've tried we tried shock and awe with Saddam, and we had complete air supremacy. We didn't have to worry about getting anybody shot down. And even with all of our shock and awe, we couldn't, quote, defeat Iraq. We had to put troops in on the ground. United States doesn't have those troops. Our army's down to 452,000 now, if that. And of that amount, the number that are combat effective, combat capable, you know, 60% of that is not combat ready. So it's just, you know, I think, particularly with Pashinyan moving to try, hey, look, talk to us, and let's negotiate. Um, and then on top of that, signing 2 days from today, a security agreement, a broad strategic security agreement with Russia that will include economic, political, and military components. And that makes anybody contemplating an attack on Iran having to take into account, well, are we going to be fighting the Russians too? So yeah, I don't think that's going to come to pass. It was a possibility 3, 4 weeks ago. I think it's diminishing with each passing day.
So you think this potential alliance with Russia, even though the Iranians said this is not an alliance, you think that might deter the airstrikes, let's say? It's probably going to come down to airstrikes.
Yeah, well, because on two fronts. One, just what Russia shares with Iran in terms of air defense systems and personnel to run those systems. They were very effective in fending off Israel's attempted attack on Iran on what was it, October 27th. Um, but then also this relationship. Maybe Iran said it wasn't a military, but it's a de facto military alliance. You know, with Iran conducting annual military exercises with Russia and China, naval exercises. You don't. That's not inconsequential. That's not minor. That's significant. Because you're right there developing, if nothing else, a camaraderie, a friendship between senior officers, and they're going to work together. And so you've got that. So I think, the crazies might ultimately do something out of Israel, but I think we have to look at what the reversal that just happened on the ceasefire, that apparently the ceasefire is going to go ahead. If it doesn't, then that means Israel has chosen a path of suicide.
Right, right. Your point is well taken. Well, that's also good news potentially because I think an attack on Iran would immediately distract the attention of whoever is still interested in our region and then give Aliyev a chance to conduct an attack on Armenia under that cover,
Right.
selling his services to the West. So, in one of the issues you mentioned is by cutting ties with Russia and Iran and signing this fictional agreement. So far, it's just, I haven't seen anything real with the United States. We're basically now we are enemies with Turkey and Azerbaijan, and now we're going to be enemies with Russia and Iran. 4 out of 4. So that's
Yeah.
a total winner, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right, right.
I,
This is suicidal, isn't it? So, my final question is, speaking of peace settlements and conflict resolution, what do you think the end game in Ukraine is going to look like? I know you've been asked this question a lot,
mhm.
but there is talk now of a possible phone conversation with Putin, between Trump and Putin. And what do you think they might agree on, and what would the potential peace settlement look like in Ukraine?
Well, Trump has zero leverage with respect to Russia and Ukraine. Right now may believe that he does. Apparently he does believe that Russia suffered significant casualties and is, looking for a way out, and that Russia's economy is teetering on the brink. It's ravaged by inflation. Now, those are wrong perceptions on Trump's part. He's going to find that no, yeah, Russia's got dealing with inflation, but there's wage growth in the process. So people are, standards of living aren't falling. And yeah, they've had some casualties, but they're not. They've got about 100,000 dead, maybe, which is a lot, but it's not a million, which is what Ukraine has. So Russia's going to call the shots. The only thing Trump could do to bring a quick end to this is he'd tell Putin, he said, okay, um, I'm going to withdraw. We're going to cut off all funding to Ukraine effective today. We're recalling all U.S. and intelligence personnel from Ukraine. They're on their own. He could tell Trump's got a lot more leverage with Zelensky to say, hey, you got to cut it. You got to back off. You're going to cut a deal with Trump. And Zelensky will go, no, I'm not. Then Trump will say, see his passport? You don't no longer have a passport to the United States. You no longer have a safe place to go. You're on your own. Zelensky can go, whoa, 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 wait a second. Let's not be too hasty. Putin, this is going to continue until the existing government in Ukraine collapses, that there is a replacement, and the replacement has nothing to do with these neo-Nazis. That's the only thing Russia's going to accept. They're not going to accept any kind of coexistence with neo-Nazis. They've been very clear on that from the outset. And it's going to mean the end of Ukraine's military. They'll be turned into like a National Guard, a territorial defense force. But a military that conducts annual exercises with NATO, that's coming to an end. They're calling a halt to this.
Regarding that, will there be any guarantee that this will not be reversed later on, and then Ukraine may not rethink its membership in NATO, let's say 10 years down the road? And what kind of guarantees can it provide to Russia? And second of all, territorially, what is it going to look like? Russia already said it's going to keep the provinces, the regions that it occupied, and so far they're progressing. Do you think that the Dnieper River potentially might be the line along which Ukraine
Yeah,
might?
I think that's the most likely line. But if Ukrainians persist in attacking Russians, then Russia will go all the way to the Polish border. And at some point, I think you're going to see countries like Romania and Hungary and even Poland sort of take back territory that is now considered Ukrainian, but was in fact formerly part of those countries. So this is not going to end well for Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't have a say, doesn't have a voice. They're going to be their voice is sign on the dotted line. You've been defeated.
It's very sad. They
Yeah.
became a pawn in the hands of the great powers and suffered catastrophic losses. The country has been devastated. You would have thought that this would be a lesson for Armenians, but they don't want to learn that lesson.
No, unfortunately, I hope you and I are wrong, but Armenia right now is being played for a fool.
Right. And finally, Larry, do you think that the next few years might bring some kind of stability, maybe some de-escalation in the world, or is this going to, because we're speeding down the road to pretty much World War III through proxy form? Do you think that the world leaders will finally stop, or do you think this escalation is going to continue? I mean, this Trump coming to power is certainly a chance. It's a chance that there will be some kind of an understanding, but do you think it's likely to happen?
No, I think the greatest likelihood is a world war of some sort that will pit the United States and what's left of the West against Russia and China. Not because Russia and China are seeking it. That's the thing. Just the opposite. They're not seeking it. It's the West that's seeking it. It's the West that's insistent that we've got to destroy China, destroy Russia. And ultimately, our wishes will be culminated in a very devastating war. I hope I'm wrong, but the rhetoric, the attitudes are such that we are unwilling to recognize that we in the West have any faults and any responsibility for this mess. And we continue to say we're the best, but as you and I were commenting, offline before we started chatting, when you look at just what has happened in Los Angeles, America is being rotted away from the inside, and it is the very things that really help make America unique and special are being eaten away through internal rot. And that rot ultimately collapses in on itself. It's happened to every great empire, and it's going to happen to us, I believe.
Well, thank you so much, Larry, for all the time, and let's hope that we can keep some hope that these events will not happen. But I think we should be ready for it.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it, and hope to have another opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Arthur, for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Larry.
Bye-bye.